Hello, welcome to another QA-Automan live stream. And today we're going to be going over more of some concepts for QA automation and, some other things about me, being a QA engineer and things of that nature. And again, any questions or comments, every time I do these streams, the more questions you have, the better, the higher the quality of this stream, and kind of going over the topics that people actually want to talk about and learn about. I definitely want to try to cover as much as I can and really try to increase the quality of the content, QA the QA. So before I just kind of uploaded a video previously talking about how the test and GXMLs are set up. I kind of wanted to do a little deep dive into that a little bit more. So if you watch my last video, we ended up with this XML here. And one of the issues that we ran into was the fact that the before I had let's see if I go to the XML here, and it's running the name generator test, the not the name coinage calculator. No, is it no? What is it? Yeah, coinage calculator test. One of the things I added here is this before test and after test, which creates our Chrome driver and then shuts it down. So, if we notice here, it says that, it created the name generator here, and then after that, it ended up kind of cutting it down and kind of having this null pointer exception. And the reason for that is this test before test will run first, then it will run all of the before classes. So what that means is, if I go back to this regression here, it runs it in this order. It goes suite, then test, and then the classes, and then all of the methods within that class. So what's happening here is, by the time it gets to, let's do a breakdown, and we'll actually see it using print statements. I think that would be the easiest thing. So we'll just do a print statement here that just says run, running before. What is this? Before test? Before test. All right. Before test. Running before test, and then we will run the after test. And this will give us an idea of when things are running, and it just makes it a lot easier for us to kind of figure out what's going on. And then this one, running before class, and then let's just run this now. So it's going to run the whole thing, the roll, kit and caboodle. Let's see what's going on here. Kind of dive in, figure it out. Why are there null pointer exceptions being tossed around? It's one of the worst and hardest things to kind of figure out, are these null pointer exceptions. All right, so let's see. It's running the two things. This is the second test. It's all the Facebook tests, but we care about are the first two tests that ran. So what happened here? It ran some generator test. Okay, that's great. And then it ran the init objects, which gave us a null pointer. And let's see. The null pointer is telling us it got to this point and said, hey, I think it tried to check for the driver being null, and it wasn't. So the whole thing is run before test, run before class, and then run after test. And these other tests got ignored, and the reason they're getting ignored is if a configuration fails, it will fail to continue running the rest of the tests. So configuration, see down here it says the total tests ran, there's 5, 2 of them passed, 1 failed, 2 skipped. Configuration fails the 1. So again, if it fails the configuration, the rest of the test will just full on skip. So why is the driver null by the time it comes down to this? So what's happening is, when you build each of these classes, it will initialize each of these classes itself. Now, the tests, though, the test portion of our base class, this will only run once. So if it's only running once, that means the first class to get initialized, we'll run this set of code first, and then the rest of the code, the other, like this guy, the one that failed, the coinage calculator test, it failed because it didn't run its before and after test here, its own instance of the driver, right? And so that's a huge problem, right? We want this code to run for all of our classes, not just the test. So one of the key fixes here is changing this to before class and after class in the test base. And the reason for this will allow us to have a driver created per class instead of it being created per test. Now, if you wanted to have one created per test, which you can totally do, you would have to make the driver static, which I don't recommend doing because later down the line, we're going to run in parallel. So one step at a time, though, baby steps on our way through. We don't want to do anything too crazy right now. Let's figure out the basics first. So the before class and after class, then let's change this and make sure that this is running those. Now, what's going to start happening is we have these before classes that are running where there's two before classes. There's this one and this one. Well, test-ng, I believe, and we're going to test it out right now, is smart enough to know that anything that's inherited from their base, their before class here, will run first, and then all the derived classes, such as coinage calculator test, will run its before class. So we're going to say running before base class, or running base at before class, and then we're just going to add these in here just to make it so we, just give us an idea of what's going on, right? After class. So running before after. Here we go. So we're going to run this. Now these should work. So here's our first driver being created. It's going to start running. Oh, and now we have a huge one. Okay, now it's going to run the second one. And it's doing it, per class. So it starts from the top and then works its way down. So now it's running this second, doing the add and subtract tests here. I think you're familiar with an older stream. If you look at my past streams, I kind of talk about how we set all of these up in some past videos. So now if you notice, kind of show you right here, everything starts to pass now. So, we're not creating the one driver once for the one class. We're creating it for all the classes. And so now this is an easy fix, and now allows us to, every time we inherit from this test base here, we can now have a proper setup moving forward. So that fixed that right up. So now we have this XML that's able to run and do all the things we want it to do correctly. Now, the next piece, the next topic here that I want to just kind of touch upon real quick is the idea that you can run in groups. Now, the purpose of groups is to kind of give your tests some kind of like context of, or maybe some kind of structure, organization, or categorization. So what you can do in your tests, you can add groups, like how it shows us all of these different attributes. All we care about for now are groups. And in the groups, you can say this one could be regression, or this one could be maybe smoke, or whatever you want to call it. We'll just call this one smoke for now. And that means that we're going to run this test. And this one will be, we're not going to add that one in smoke. And then what's the other one that we have in our regression? The name. Yeah, we'll add this one. So if you start adding groups, you're like, just start defining groups, and we're going to say, okay, now if I click run, or we actually have to, let's also set up our regression test here as well. Or smoke. And we're going to delete this test here. So in our suite, we specify our test, but instead of classes, right, you can specify groups. And then inside those groups, you define, or you say run, and what are you running? You can include the group name. So we're going to include the name smoke, and then just close that up. So test groups run, just everything smoke, right? Does this one have an attribute? I don't think it does. Yeah, no, it just has include. Okay, yeah. So let's run this. Let's see what kind of results we get back if we just straight up run our smoke XML. No tests found. That is in one bit of information here is before we add that in, we want to add in our package or classes. So you do need to specify a place where you want to run all your groups or all the classes that will run within these groups. So we'll just do package, just package level. Our package and our package name will be tools and taverns star. Just give me everything. Just all of it. Give me all of the stuff. This is interesting. Okay. So some ordering here. We have groups first, then the package. We want to close out this. Okay. Now let's run it. So now what we'll do is we'll run through all of the tests within Tools and Taverns. Now, what's happening here? Oh, shoot. So everything's null. Everything's breaking. Nothing's working. What's going on? Well, if you specify groups, it will literally only run the things you've specified under the groups. We didn't specify our classes here. And that's one of the downsides with groups, is that you have to specify and put groups on everything. And that's one of the big problems. So in this class, you would also have to specify groups as well. And you have to put smoke. And then in the base, you also have to add here groups, right? And then put smoke. And it becomes this whole thing. So you have to add this to every single annotation that has to be under the smoke, or else it will not work. And so I'm just going to run this just to kind of show you what's going on. But again, the limitations here are the fact that it ends up being you have to specify groups everywhere. So let's see, it's booting everything up. See, now it's actually running, which is great. It's running. It's doing what we expect it to do. However, if I made it blow up correctly, yep. So it passed one test here, the first one, adding coins, but the second, the name generator, it failed all of a sudden. It says that this thing wasn't initialized. Well, we run over our initializers here is because we didn't add our smoke here. So it's really a big thing, a big issue where you have to start doing groups. It's not necessarily a bad thing. You can put groups, and if you're just really attentive to knowing where the groups belong, then you're fine. The other advantage, or there's one solution that can probably solve a lot of your problems, is you can put a test annotation on the top, and then you can type in groups, and then you can specify groups at a class level. So this, and then we can remove this here and remove these. This will specify everything under here is under the smoke test. So if I run smoke, all the tests under this class will run. So we'll just show you. We'll just add it both here, and we'll move groups from all the other places, just to kind of show you the magic that it is groups on a class level. So we'll delete them from everywhere. And now we run. So here we go. Okay. Oh, we're breaking already. Inheritance. Oh my gosh. So the unfortunate part is you do have to add groups to your inherited classes as well. So again, I guess there is this downside to this whole thing. So if I rerun this, now I think everything should be fine. So for every new group you introduce, you have to add it to your base, which is kind of the unfortunate piece for groups. But again, I mean, that's groups in a nutshell. There's nothing more to that. You know, you have your groups, you specify what you want to run in your groups. Otherwise, don't use groups and just specify your classes. It's as simple as that. There's a lot of white on the screen. A lot of white. What's going on? It's too much white for too long. Okay, what happened? Everything broke. Everything failed. Null pointer exception. Group. Yeah. So one of the problems with these groups is you would have to specify. Yeah, you have to specify each one. That is a bummer. That is a straight bummer. So my solution there, if you're using a base class, is just specify the tests instead, or you can just specify packages. You know what? You're like just run everything. Just give me everything. Run all tools and taverns, and it will just run everything in the package. Or you're gonna specify, like I did here, classes in particular. It's whatever works for you. But I mean, those are the tools, right? You have either or. So we have our test class. We have our tests here. We have our regression. You're like, let's run these. This is gonna be our regression. We have that all said and done. What is the next piece? What's the next thing that we need to start accomplishing to make sure our tests are running in a good fashion? Well, that'd be running in parallel. That's probably like the next solution here, or I would add, is running things in parallel. So you can specify parallel in different tiers. You can do it in, you can just say you can set class, tests, or methods. There's instances as well. You can specify none, true, or false, but the idea is you can specify how this runs in parallel. So you can either do it by test. So if you set tests, it would run this and this in parallel. So let's just show that. So it's going to run tests in parallel, and then what we also want to do is specify our where is thread count. Thread count is the number of threads when you run things in parallel. Well, if we added 3, that would be silly because we only have running parallel and tests, and we only have 2 tests. So, 2 is what we would set. The default is 5 already. So if you didn't specify thread count, it would just try to run 5 if possible. So for cleanliness, you don't need to add that for this. But later down the line, when you start running like 20 classes, it'll only be running 5 at a time. So let's run this. So what's going to start happening is we're actually going to... we're going to run this. We're going to have 2 browsers pop up. So we have 1, 2... and now it's going to run our Facebook on one, and it's going to run the Tools and Taverns on the other. We did get a failure on that Facebook, but the idea there is that you saw that there are 2 browsers running at any given time and running in parallel within there. I think there was a problem here. Regression on Facebook. Checking it out. Let's see. What are some problems here? No such element. I think it has to do with this Facebook changing their what do you call it? They're changing their elements. This is why you can't automate other people's sites. This is why I do not recommend automating third parties. So what's happening here? Our driver failed to initialize. That is very interesting. If we do it on class level, let's see. Let's test. We're testing some things. Testing the tests. So what this will do is it will take each test, run it one by one, and then within that test, it will create threads for each of those test cases. And let's see kind of results we get back. It looks to be running some tests. But it is failing a lot. Okay. Regression on tools and taverns. That's the confusion part. Here, these are named incorrectly. And I was like, what? I didn't understand. There we go. Regression on Facebook, regression on tools and taverns. Because down here on in the results, it wasn't making sense to me. Session ID is null. Did you call driver.quit? Did we try? Did we? No. That should be fine because we are creating a driver per base class. These are separate. They are created separately. Let's debug. Let's figure out how to debug and what the reason of why this is failing. This is failing because selectors situation. That's fine. Let's ignore that for now. Let's go into the generated name test. This test kind of keeps failing. There's because there's very similar names that are. I don't understand why they're so similar. Name generator dwarf. Oh yeah, let's do elf. All right, totally change it up, make it different. That should start passing those tests. Secondly, to make these tests work, the session ID is null using WebDriver after quit. So running before class, running before at class, running the base. Oh. Okay. So what is happening? It's running both of those. Let's get rid of that. We don't need that there. Just want to make sure there's nothing. Okay. So before class, we want to run this first, and then we want to run the init object. Running class. All right, rerunning. Here we go. We have to debug these kinds of things, right? We've got to really figure out what's going on here. That's what happens when you live stream, do all these things. So we're looking to see why. Okay. Looks like we're actually running the tests now. There we go. And then now we're running the Facebook tests. Splendid. Wonderful. Okay. Everything's coming up QA-Automan. So checks green across the board. Perfect. So what I did is I had to remove the groups from everything, or the groups, remove the at annotation test from the top of this test and remove that from that. So, again, you don't need to do that. It's best that you just specify your tests and inset the tests in the groups themselves. Otherwise, just go here and specify the tests here. But there we go. We got green across the board. We have all of our tests running. This is great. This is good news. This is where we want to be. Now, one of the next pieces of kind of that we want to start running into is, let's add a data provider. So, I've mentioned this in previous tutorials, but I haven't done it in Kotlin, and I'll have specific videos on a lot of these concepts here. But one of the ideas here is adding the data provider for a test. So, to add a data provider, we want to go to one of our tests, and let's say that this data provider here is a way to generate different data to come through for So like you can use one test and put a bunch of data in and then have it run through using that data, and you can kind of test different data sets using just the same code over and over again, keeping that dry principle alive. So we're going to add data provider, and we'll just name this one name generator data. And we can specify the data down here. So we have data provider, and I think I did put this in a previous class. Did I not? I'm just gonna double check real quick. I did add one here. I did add one here before. I did go over this, but we're gonna add one more. Just kind of keep going with it. Except for I'm gonna keep this in Tools and Taverns data. I'm gonna add a new one for that name generator. So we'll say name gen data, and again we need to return an array of array string. That's the type. It's a 2D array. So we want to now we'll have a return type in a second, but then we want to say that this is the data provider, and the name of our data provider is just name the same name as the function. That's all you got to do. We want to return, what type are we going to return? An array of arrays. So our first one, we wanted to specify there's different names in the Tools and Taverns. If I go back to Tools and Taverns here and we go back to name, we have male, female, random, and then dwarf, elf, gnome, halfling, human. We have a bunch of these. So we just want to add a few. So we know that we have dwarf, and then we have male, and then maybe we can add a second one. And again, guys, if you have any questions or anything or any kind of topics you would like to go over, feel free to type in chat. Let me know. I'd love to go over, anything, any challenges you have. I'd love to kind of work through those. So an array of, and then we'll do like elf, and then female, and then what's another? Let's just add one more. Human. We'll do human male. Just the last as a. Human male. All right. So we have our name gen here. We go back to our name generator test, and we now just need to specify our data provider, and then where is that data provider located? And you specify the data provider class, and that would be in the we have to wrap this in a new class. You could keep this under weather generator data, but that would just kind of be silly because this is name generator data. So we should just kind of keep our code organized and kind of know where to find things instead of just kind of just throwing them everywhere, right? So now we're in the name generator data class, and this all lives under the Tools and Taverns test data. Again, just a way to kind of organize all of our classes into one file instead of having like 500 files, because that would get really cumbersome. So where's our data provider? It's in this class, which I'm going to add, and then double colon class, and then you want to do .java, and it needs to complain as usual. Why are you complaining? What? Oh, never mind. Don't do .java. Just double colon class, and then you're fine. So, however, this name generator data, if we go back to it, it's taking in two strings. So whatever your data provider is passing in, you got to make sure your test itself is also passing those as variables. So the variable names don't matter, but the types matter, and they're string. So this one is going to be the race, right? So like this is for Dungeons and Dragons, so elves, dwarves, all that. So we have that as a string, and then we have the gender as a string as well. Male, female, or random, or whatever it may be. So these are going to be passed in. So where do we pass these in? Well, we're selecting gender and race down here. So we just replace these two with the following. And we're going to, when we select race, we select by value. Okay. Select by value. You know what we should do here? We should add a check. Assert equals. And what we should assert, and why are we adding this assert? I'll explain in 1 second. We want to add the assert. Asserts. What is happening? Why is it not finding the test in G assert? What? What is happening? We want the test in G assert. Why is it complaining? I'm just going to straight up copy this and paste it here. Whoa, what? What is happening? Re-import. We are running into a lot of weird errors. Whoa, okay. What is happening here? Page. Very interesting. All right, I'm going to debug this later. Why it doesn't have access to this is beyond me. Our dependencies they look fine. Oh, scope. So in your test in G, you can set scope to make sure you have these dependencies only in test and not in your page objects. And this can enforce the idea that you can only have asserts in your test. This is a whole topic that it's really, not I wouldn't say controversial, but the idea is like, if you want to make sure something, like if I select this drop down and set this value, if I want to start bootstrapping my code, I want to make sure that, hey, my value is in fact set to the selector. So again, we'll keep the scope as test, and we'll just that's fine, and we'll kind of move forward from there, and we'll make sure that here we'll add the assert, then assert equals that the name generator page dot gender drop down. Is it gender? Yeah. Dot value. All right. Get attribute value is equal to our gender, and then we'll do the same thing, but instead of gender drop down, we'll do race drop down and make sure the value is equal to the race. And then we would say gender was not set correctly, and then this one would be race was not set correctly. So, again, if we, this is how you should do things, right? You can put the asserts here. Now, if I went to select gender and I wanted to set the gender to something, we would want something here to verify we did in fact select that value. Because again, if you're going to try to select something, you want to verify that it actually worked. And instead of writing this code and checking this every single time, I'd have to write select gender and then have to set this assert on every single test that I would be using select gender. So, pick your battles, but we'll just leave this as is and just kind of keep the scope at test and kind of, proceed forward from there. So let's run this. And this is going to run this 3 times. Now that we have that data provider set. How are we doing on time? We have a little bit of time. So it's running, boots it up, full screens. Wow, it was jamming. That was so fast. This one failed because it started with dwarf male. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna kind of mix these up. And the reason why is when you start on that page will have dwarf male names. So the likelihood of having the same name is a high chance. So wow, that failed miraculously fast. So what we want to do is we need to slow it down. It's going way too fast. So we're gonna slow this down just a smidge, right? Add 2 seconds in between. Now again, I'm doing a thread.sleep because I need to. There's a more complicated wait that I would need to put here, and we're not going to kind of go in through that whole thing because the idea here is if I come to this guy and I click generate, we're sending a network call out, and we are waiting for it to come back, and then that's what kind of sets this text. So we're just going to wait 2 seconds, and then we'll kind of start checking things out. I would advise having a wait and maybe have some way to kind of have that network check. I mean, that's some really complicated stuff that we don't need to really do. And so if you notice there, you can kind of see that slowdown and how long it takes between the clicks and the data updating. So, and there we go. We now are running 3 tests on top of this, running different types of data. And now, I mean, we have a good, let's run everything. Like how much testing do we have going on right here? Let's, for regression on tools and taverns, instead of classes, I'm just going to say, package, just the whole thing. Give me everything. So what happened in here? Tools and taverns, just all of it, and kill this, kill that, add this. Let's run all of it. Let's see what kind of results we get back here. So it's running all the tests, and we're running into some failures, but that's okay. All right, we're running another set. Let's see, one failed out of. Did we get another failure? 12, 13. Boom! Look at that. Okay, so what do we have? 12 of 13 tests. So we have 13 tests. One failed. This one failed because values did not match expectation when expected 22032, but found zeros across the board. I think that is a weighting issue. We'll just add some more time there. I believe that's just a time situation thing. But I mean, what did that do? It took 1 minute for the full regression, 1 minute 14 seconds, and it ran 13 tests. So it's not bad. That's a pretty good amount of testing there that's kind of happening. And then we can just run this over and over again. And you'd run this somewhere in Jenkins or Circle CI. I mean, something I'd love to start touching upon again. Things have changed drastically since. But again, that's kind of some good stuff there. If you have any questions in chat, let me know. If whatever you'd like me to go over, if you have like a website, or even if you have some code for me to look over, I'd love to get my hands on some code and kind of help you with kind of how to automate or get you through some more troubled areas. Or even if you directly DM me and say, hey, here's my GitHub, I'd love for you to kind of go over and kind of help kind of debug these things. I would love to do that. I'd love to start a kind of a series that kind of helps take take problem areas and kind of help and find those solutions. I think that'd be really useful. But I need the community's help for that. So, let me know, comments down below, and again, if you haven't and you're coming in and tuning in right now, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. It's really important to know when I'm going to be streaming. I mostly do it earlier in the week. I haven't set a schedule yet, but that will be happening soon. So until then, guys, keep on automating. If you have any questions, love to hear them. You guys, I would love to hear your feedback. So until then, guys, I'll see you online and keep on automating.